Dimitar Koletsi and Zall Gjocaj, fighting against environmental damage in Albania. The lifestyle and livelihoods of the inhabitants of Zall Gjocaj National Park are being disrupted by the construction of a new hydroelectric plant. Despite only being 100 kilometers away from the Albanian capital of Tirana, Zall Gjocaj National Park is a remote valley whose inhabitants mostly live off agriculture and livestock, as they have been doing for centuries. 3 years ago, life in Zall Gjocaj changed forever with a decision from the local and national authorities to allow the construction of a hydroelectric power plant within the borders of the national park. A plan to divert the course of the river flowing across the park to produce electrical energy will have serious consequences not only for the environment in the valley, but also for the inhabitants of Zall Gjocaj, who have used the river for decades to drink, water the crops, and raise the animals. The local residents were among the last to hear about these plans. The local authorities took some time to inform us of this project. It was only thanks to village gossip that we only heard about the construction of the plan at the beginning, recalls Dimitar Koletsi, one of the leaders of Zall Gjocaj, an organized group that has emerged in the community campaigning against the plan's construction. The construction company initially claimed it had consulted with local villagers about the project, and it also claimed that the power plant would not use the entire volume of the river for energy production. It soon became clear that they were not telling the truth. As Koletsi tells it, the company consulted people who lived outside the Zall Gjocaj region and would not be affected by the plant. The company obtained permission to use a percentage of the river on the condition that it left some water for the people of Zall Gjocaj. It also emerged that the company had informed local authorities that they should be allowed to use all the water from the river, claiming that the locals were not actually using it. At the moment, no water is left for the villagers, and the way of life has been disrupted, potentially forever. Hence, at the moment, no water is left for the villagers. The villagers did not trust the company, rightly so, because the plan has already disrupted the way of life forever. They promised us that the project would bring development to a region, that we would benefit from the plan, but in reality, they don't care about us, states Koletsi. The people of Zall Gjocaj felt they had no choice but to start protesting the construction of the plant. They have kept up the protests throughout the past 3 years, many of them regularly making the 4-hour drive to Tirana so that the protests can be heard by more people and by the national authorities. During this time, they have also organized awareness meetings with other mountain communities affected by similar problems. Some of these groups have started their own protest movements inspired by Zall Gjocaj. There are many power plants now planned in rural areas of Albania. With corruption widespread in the region, it is common for local authorities to have an interest in construction works going ahead, and they routinely intimidate anyone who opposes construction works. Citizens in the affected areas also face intimidation from the plant companies. They always use the same techniques, explains Koletsi. At first, they approach us in a positive, enticing way. They try to highlight the advantages of the plan for local economies. Then they start using bribes to convince people. If the bribes are refused, that's when they move to shadier techniques, including using their connections to local authorities to have people fired or even detained. In Zall Gjocaj, 4 village elders who had served as community representatives were recently fired from the public offices. Koletsi admits that such actions have made it more difficult to convince the general population to take part in rallies. Many people are unaware of the rights, afraid of consequences, and intimidated by the police and the prosecutors. Despite such misgivings, around 150 people still show up at the movement's protest actions. Raising the public profile of the movement is also a complicated process. In Albania, many media outlets are linked to the ruling party. They have been completely silent on Zall Gjocaj. Some independent media have covered the local population struggle, and a pro-opposition media outlet has been released a documentary based on the protest. Over the last few years, Zall Gjocaj has brought several local and national institutions to court to stop the damage to the home, including the Ministry of the Environment and the National Agency of Protected Areas. Unfortunately, these legal cases have had little effect. Court hearings are repeatedly delayed, while the construction of the plan continues. Koletsi notes too that some of the so-called independent experts contracted by the state institutions to evaluate the situation were seen getting into cars belonging to the hydroelectric company, calling their impartiality into question. What we need are truly independent experts, otherwise nothing will change, he says. As for the courts delaying our hearings, justice delayed is justice denied. In this extremely difficult context, EED support has been crucial for Zall Gjocaj, and not just from a practical point of view. It has given us hope, it has shown us that there are still people who believe us. It feels like the light at the end of the tunnel, declared Koletsi. The people of Zall Gjocaj are now ready for the next phase of the battle, presenting a case against the Albanian government to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. We have to keep fighting. My great-grandfather used the water from this river as I have done since I was born. In Zall Gjocaj we rely on the river for agriculture, for cattle, for water mills, to make flour for bread, says Koletsi. If the factory takes the river away from us, it will destroy not only our livelihood, but also our culture.